thrilled to welcome Charlie David back to the podcast. Charlie is a storyteller who was last here in episode 33 talking about his book and movie Mulligans. His new anthology series, Shadowlands, recently premiered on Out TV in Canada and on Vimeo worldwide. Charlie, thanks so much for coming back.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Shadowlands is, I'll go with interesting anthology series. You've got three very diverse stories going on in here. Tell us what the series is about.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the book, in the anthology of short stories, there's actually around, I think, probably lucky 13 stories in it. And for me, it was really an exercise in writing and exploring, and certainly exploring some of the darker recesses of my mind, because it was quite a departure from something like my earlier books of Boy Mid-Flight or Mulligans, which were more straightforward, either family drama or kind of romance type of situation. So with Shadowlands, I mean, I've always loved Greek and Roman myth. And so I found a lot of inspiration for my stories through mythology. And I wanted to take some of the themes that are explored there and put them in a modern real world setting. So that was kind of the starting point. And then now with the television miniseries, what we did is we chose 3 of the stories from the original book to bring to the screen. And so looking through, I chose the 3 that I found kind of the most compelling and that also were somewhat cohesive thematically. So the 3 episodes that we look at are Narcissus, Mating Season, and Pygmalion Revisited. And to me, it's an exploration of love. In Narcissus, it's someone who has never come to grasp love. It's like everybody around this person has experienced it, is talking about it, and it's something that he's never found for himself. And he is an egomaniac and a narcissist, so it kind of has a downward spiral. The second episode is called Mating Season. It's set in the 1950s with a sailor and his boyfriend who go out hiking into the woods, and they're on a camping trip. On that camping trip, they start to explore the idea of non-monogamy or opening their relationship, which is a big conversation for anyone, and certainly kind of setting it in this 1950s time, had its own interesting aspects. So they meet a hiker in the woods, a mysterious man, and things kind of progress from there. And then the last episode is called Pygmalion Revisited. And in a way, it's a retelling of the myth Pygmalion and Galatia, where a sculptor falls in love with his work, and the goddess Athena takes pity on him and brings it to life. In our version, it's modern day, where there's a painter who does work for churches, and he's commissioned to make a painting of Saint Bacchus. And Saint Bacchus and his partner Sergius were for a long time kind of iconic gay saints, and they were decanonized in 1969 by the Catholic Church. And so all the altars and churches bearing their name were taken down. Anyway, in this painter's so he goes home with this commission, with this idea. He starts to explore, how am I going to paint St. Bacchus? And he ends up working and reworking his deceased boyfriend into the painting. And so that one, it's kind of more of a star-crossed lovers situation. And so, yeah, for me, I mean, love is the most interesting topic to me to explore, and its many nuances and how people approach it, what we learn from it, how we move on from it. So those were things that I was really excited to tackle in the miniseries.
What was the process that you had to go through to adapt your book to these short televised pieces? Because Narcissus and Mating Season are about 25 minutes, and Pygmalion Revisited is a little longer, at about 40.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for I mean, adapting a book for screen, whether it's a film or television, always has it's this beautiful mix of opportunity and constraint. And certainly, when working in kind of independent, certainly queer cinema and television, the constraints are often budgetary, right? Because we just have fewer networks, a smaller audience to be, uh, kind of marketing these things to. But um, for Pygmalion, there's two versions. We did a 25-minute cut as well, and then the 40-minute. So the 25-minute fits your standard television half an hour with commercials. But when looking at that story, I mean, the cut that you presumably watched, the 40-minute, man, like when we put that edit together, and then I spoke with the network and they said, this is great, but we really want, like, we have a time slot for this show, and if we go ahead and we're going to, do more episodes, presumably it fits in a half an hour slot. It's Sunday nights at 8 p.m. It can't be now this one is 13 minutes and that one's 40 minutes or whatever. So I really, like, I had to go back in and chop that one down to 25 minutes. And that was one of those situations of really killing your darlings, as the saying go, drowning some puppies, where you go, okay, I don't want to, but I have to, like, remove some scenes. I have to tighten this up. And in some ways, I feel like the 25-minute version of that is equally strong and interesting in different ways. Yeah, but
That's interesting because in thinking about it, I'm like, whoa, that's cutting half the episode nearly.
right, yeah, it's like it's 15 minutes, and when you look at it, then it's like what do you choose to remove? And what I did, I mean, when I'm writing for screen, I'll be the first to admit that my dialogue is not necessarily, the type of stuff that you would hear people talking on the street. I feel like I construct uh, thoughts, just the way that I think is sometimes a little bit different. And so even working with the actors, um, some of it in terms of monologues in the middle of a show, that type of thing. That was the place that I first started to cut because I was acting in that episode as well. Some of my own lengthy speeches that,
A little self-editing.
yeah, I thought that was the best place to start. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, taking a book and a short story and then making it into television has a lot of inherent challenges, but it was something that I got so much joy from doing. I really enjoyed that process, and as I started to write and then think about casting and imagine these locations beyond what was explored in the book, and then making it real, right? Because you can write something, and when it's in a book form, you can really be anywhere. You want to be in a castle, you want there to be a dragon, you want, like, all that's good to go. When you need to actually produce that, actually, translate that to screen, then, like I said, constraints come into play. What locations can I actually get? What can I actually afford? And so you start to make decisions based on those things. That's when the producer hat comes on. So you can tell the story the best way that you can with the resources and assets that you have available.
And this isn't your first time to produce or to write for screen, of course, but it is your first time to direct.
Mm-hmm.
Or scripted material, at least, because you've done documentaries. What was it like for you as a creative to now put on this hat you hadn't worn before?
I was so excited. I was, like, terrifically excited to do it, while at the same time had bouts of anxiety every night in pre-production, in production. Just that thought of, like, can I do this? Can I really pull this off? And thankfully I had just such an awesome creative team. And I feel like people really, I felt so lucky. Like everybody brought their A game. Everybody seemed to really care to do a good job to tell the best stories that we can. And that's, truth is that's not always the case. Like oftentimes in any job, there's people who are just showing up. And I felt like I didn't have people who were just showing up. I had people who, were working long hours, and yeah, just wanted to, for whatever reason, make this. It was like it was all of our babies. It was a village raising a child as opposed to just me. So after I saw that happening in the first episode, I got to relax a little bit, and everybody was very supportive in doing their jobs fantastically well so that I could focus on the directing, working with the actors, and telling these stories.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't cut yourself any slack with your director job, because the very first episode you did was Pygmalion Revisited, in which you also are the lead actor in it as well. Mm. Did you plan that from the get-go, or is that just the way the shooting schedule sorted out?
I did decide to do that episode first, I think partly because at the beginning it was the one that I was the most scared of. As we progressed, each episode turned out to be the one I was most scared of. But because each one has, its own little challenges, right? Whether you're, with mating season shooting out in the woods, and then, you're out in the elements. So whether it's the sound of cars in the distance, whether it's going to be raining, you only have so much daylight to work with. There's always challenges, right? With Narcissus, it was a bigger visual production. So making sure that we were prepared, and all the props and costuming and all the pieces were tight. But with Pygmalion Revisited, yeah, to be acting and directing, again, I go back to my team just being so supportive and understanding of what that process for me needed to be, when the story is like, oh my God, like it's an emotional roller coaster. And for it to work, I really needed to be present as an actor, for it to be believable, for people to open their hearts and empathize with what was going on. Because if I didn't deliver, if I wasn't an open vessel for that story, it was really going to fall flat. And so in the moments of acting, I needed to put away any thought of what time is food, arriving for lunch, and are the trucks all outside? Are they parked correctly? And, visually what's going on in the shot, and blah, blah, blah. We need music at this aspect, and just go, okay, all of that is 5 minutes later. In this 5 minutes, live the scene.
And I think you did a great job. We reviewed this a couple episodes back, and the Pygmalion was heartbreaking and yet had joy in it, because of the scenes of when the two were together. And as I told you before we started recording, I think mating season's my favorite, just because those two are so. They're in the 50s, but they could just be a modern couple as well.
Yeah, I think with mating season, that's an exploration of open relationships, of non-monogamy, which is something that I think, it's a prevalent discussion today, certainly among queer people, and has been for a while. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have its challenges, and doesn't require a lot of communication to create a healthy, open relationship, that works. But yeah, Oscar Moreno, who played Mateo, kind of the biker-looking guy, and then Nicholas James Wilson, who played Will, the sailor. I was just so excited to create these kind of iconic looks. I wanted to give it a bit of a Tom of Finland, like 1950s kind of beefcake magazines, in their costuming, which was like super fun. And then, yeah, those two guys, again, they just really, they opened their hearts to the stories. We had the luxury of rehearsing, because as a first time director, I wanted that. I didn't want to just, have these actors show up on set and say, okay, action, go. I wanted to, to make sure that we had answered any questions, that we had really exercised the scenes, and so that there was a full comprehension of what was going on, because not everybody has also been in an open relationship or felt the motivation to be in one, or in Oscar's character's case, felt the reticence, the hesitation about what that might mean, how that might translate for the relationship going forward. And at the same time, all of this packed in, I think it largely started because I had recently done a documentary called Polylove, all about polyamory, and it was a 1-hour doc where we explored that. I learned a lot in doing that, and I wanted to, also explore that in a scripted form, and not bring any inherent judgment to it or encouragement. I didn't want to say, yes, this is the way that we should be going forward, or no, it shouldn't. Like, I think in my mind, the best work we can do as creators, whether it's a book, a TV show, a movie, a painting, is throw ourselves into the work and then let the audience be smart enough to walk away and make decisions for themselves, to incite a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I hope with that episode that we will do that people watching will, have a talk with their significant other or friends or whatever, and just consider what these ideas of relationship and love, what do they mean? Because for me, like doing the Polylove doc, one of the things that I learned is this term called compersion. And what compersion is, it's kind of the opposite of jealousy. So normally, if my partner was to go out on a date with somebody else, I would immediately feel jealousy. And in the poly world, the idea is that jealousy isn't a real emotion. It's a knee-jerk reaction to something. So you need to dig deeper to find out, why am I feeling insecure in this moment? Why might this bother me? And to work towards compersion, which is the idea that I am joyful, I am happy in your happiness. And just like, we have many friends in our life in the best situation. Maybe there's one that we like to go to the beach with, one that we play sports with, the person that we go to the movies with, the one that, we just laugh our heads off, and the person that we cry, on their shoulder when needed. And we put so much pressure on monogamy for that other person to be our everything, right? They have to give us amazing sex, be our business partners in life with, purchasing property and paying the bills and stuff together, to make us laugh, to be our Netflix and chill, to, be the person to go to family events with, to be our best friend, all these things in one. And so I think the idea of compersion and non-monogamy is, what if we allowed room in our hearts to enjoy other people more, not always sexually, sometimes for some people that's part of it, but trying to lose that, the ugly green monster inside of jealousy.
The book's been around since about 2010.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to bring this to the screen now? And has it always kind of been on your radar of something to adapt?
Yeah, it's been in my drawer of ideas and scripts for many years. I think I adapted the first, probably Mating Season and Narcissus, 2011, maybe 2012. I had this idea of kind of doing almost like a night gallery or Twilight Zone, a reimagining of those type of half-an-hour shows where each episode we get to go into a different world, a new world of characters and kind of intrigue, and explore that. And I had actually had offers from different networks in the States and Canada back around that time, but the offers that were coming forward were just they would be very challenging budget wise, and things just didn't line up at the right time. Uh, a very common thing in production is you have an American network and a Canadian network, or often a European one. Especially license fees from broadcasters have been shrinking over the past 10 years dramatically because of things like Netflix and, other ways of consuming our entertainment. That it's becoming more and more necessary to kind of clobber together a budget on a show from many different financial partners. And so early on, it was like I'd get an offer here, but the other network wasn't ready, or tax credits couldn't be triggered because of X, Y, and Z. And so it just kind of all came together. I guess I signed the deal in 2016, the end of 2016, got the green light to make the show, and then spent last year, 2017, making it, and now we're releasing it. And that's often the reality of any show, that it can take years in development, years in kind of like putting together the budget, and for just all those pieces to come together magically at the right moment. So I was, really excited. It did kind of feel like, oh my God, it's been 8 years now that we're, finally putting this out. But yeah, sometimes that is just the nature of the beast, as it were.
As a creator that works in television / movies quite often, do you find it I don't know if I want to go with easier or better landscape to work in now that there is Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and like all of these places where you could put your material out? Or is it just as tough as it ever was to pull it all together to actually create it?
It's harder than ever before.
Oh.
That's the truth. And there's many factors involved in that. In a nutshell, it's that we consume entertainment differently. Just like the internet has interrupted so many kind of business models, including books, including music, television, travel industry, healthcare, on and on and on. We're continuing to have to adapt faster and faster. But we live in a world where we have the assumption of free video. We have the assumption of free entertainment. And if not free, then $9.99 a month for as much as we can consume. So when you split $9.99 amongst the amount of shows on a platform like a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or whatever, what trickles down to the content creator is literally fractions of pennies per view. So compare that to 10 years ago when people were buying DVDs and it was $19.99 a DVD or $24.99 MSRP. So we're having to hustle harder than ever. In one way, we have, yes, more places to put our content, more opportunity for audience in a way, but monetizing that is a totally different story. And even, even 3 years ago, people were more apt to use VOD, video on demand, and purchase rentals on an iTunes or an Amazon or a Vimeo. Now even that market is like rapidly disintegrating, where we just have the assumption of SVOD, subscription video on demand, watch as much as I want for a small fee, or FVOD, free video on demand. So as a producer, that's the new challenge, and it exists for every broadcaster out there too. People are seeing, broadcasters, people are cutting their cable everywhere and going to the internet. So it's the Wild West, and it's okay. How do we protect copyright if that's important, right? And that's a huge debate that's going on. Even like the internet, one side is that the internet should be the Wild West and everything should be free and, free speech and blah, blah, blah. And then on the other side is, but how do we protect creators? Because it's still taboo to go and shoplift at a store. It's still taboo. I would never, walk on a car sales lot and drive away without paying, but it feels fine to not pay for television, films. It's common dinner conversation, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Does it
that's the
help in the case of Shadowlands that it does have the connection to Out TV? That there's an actual broadcast cable network who is partnered?
oh oh, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have done it without Out TV. It would be impossible to, not impossible. It would be very difficult to make scripted programming or literally any programming without a commissioning broadcaster or platform partner. And sometimes that is, could be an Amazon or a Netflix, but somebody's got to pay for it because the audience has become more hesitant too. So yeah, I mean, in the case of Shadowlands, it was a mix of a license fee from Out TV in Canada, some tax credit money, and a personal investment. And those were split almost one third. A third from me, a third from what will end up being tax credit money, a third from broadcaster. And so now, it's up to recoup my investment through people hopefully enjoying the show, buying the show, and maybe if we're lucky, selling to some other networks down the line.
Mm-hmm. Is there the
So
chance for more episodes?
yeah, for sure. Right now, so the show just premiered last night on Out TV, and so just like in the old days, we'll be looking at those Nielsen ratings and seeing how it lands. And even that's a model that's like, it's really changed because yeah, some people get the cable channel. Out TV also has an an SVOD platform. It's kind of like a gay Netflix. It's called Out TV Go. And so on Out TV Go, it is that Netflix model of watching as much gay content as you want, right? And it's $4.99 a month, so it's a little bit of a sale from Netflix. So you're combining those numbers. How many people are watching on Out TV Go? How many people are watching on Out TV the channel? And hopefully there is enough buzz and interest that will help trigger more episodes. I loved directing and producing scripted. I really want to do more. It challenged me in so many ways that just kind of ignited the fire in me again. After doing documentary is wonderful. I love doc. I'm doing some other reality stuff, a dating show. I have a pilot for a cooking show coming up. And that stuff is fun, but it's inherently different. Like when you're doing documentary, I'm going to do an interview with you and I show up and what your office or home or what your environment is, I might zhuzh it a little bit, but it still needs to reflect you and be your space. Whereas with scripted, it's literally everything that's in that frame I need to have thought of and planned. And so that to me is exciting. Every little prop, every piece of costuming, the blocking of it, the lighting, it just has more challenges, but more payoff for me as a creator.
Yeah. And again, I mean, in the same way that you challenged yourself, first time director, having to direct yourself, you also gave yourself three massively different stories. They all had a different look, a different emotional feel, a different color palette, different setting, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that part. I mean, and that's why things like sitcom or shows that are episodic are easier to do because you have the friend's apartment and most things happen either at the coffee shop downstairs, Central Perk, or in one of the apartments, right? Your sets are set. They are what they are. You pay for them once and that's it. Whereas in a show like this, yeah, moving forward, it's like, okay, every new episode is a whole new world. So where is that world set? What does it look like? New casting every time. So, but for me, the financial kind of offset of doing that is that, it's super fun to work with new actors every time. It's super fun to like create a new world, a new location, and also like in these first three to dive into different eras to play in like kind of, a fantastical version of what I imagine the 20s might have felt like in Narcissus versus the 1950s and then the modern day episodes. So I think in a way this first mini season of Shadowlands was me stretching my muscles as a producer and director in scripted and just seeing, let's see how different we can make these and play in these different spaces.
Mm-hmm. How fast did you shoot these three?
Each one was Pygmalion Revisited. I think we had 7 shooting days, and the other 2 episodes were five shooting days each. So, which is actually a fairly kind of standard and healthy amount of time for a half an hour television scripted. So, I mean, lots of reality shows will shoot in a day or 2 days, and not to say that was easy because just even based on how you write, whether it's night or day, how much is night, how much is day, and then like on Narcissus, we had a lot of night stuff. So then we were shooting in the summer. That means we can't start shooting until it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock until we have like dark.
Yeah.
And you're shooting through until, 5:30 in the morning, which makes for a tired crew.
And even with mating season, you're outdoors the whole time, and you got to hope you match your continuity from, if the clouds suddenly showed up.
Yeah, and that's it. Like there's the one scene where there's the 3 guys, they're kind of perched up on a cliff and they're looking out, and one of the guys is telling the story of how he got his blue ticket, which was something that happened to military people in the past where, if your sexuality was found out, you'd be given a blue ticket, which was a dishonorable discharge. And that scene, it was like rain, shine, sprinkle, rain, shine. We actually had to go back 3 days in a row to try and match because we had, kind of a 3 shot of the 3 of them. Everybody has a close up. None of it was matching. And then finally on the 3rd day, we got it. But that's something that, when you're on a tight schedule and a tight budget, that's really challenging because then you need to like make pickups, make room in the schedule on another day to go back to something. And there was another day that was like a total rain out was forecast. And so I was back at the crew houses because most of us are from Toronto, but we were shooting about 2.5 hours from here. And so rented a bunch of houses in this little town. And I was like, can I make a tent in the living room of one of these and shoot the things that happen in the tent? Can we recreate that indoors? Because otherwise, what are we going to do? We can't, it's not going to make sense to walk around in the rain. Just in terms of protection of the gear, for the actors. So, luckily I was probably up till 2 a.m. that night, rescheduling everything, trying to figure out, okay, we're building this tent, but not that much happens in the tent. So what else can we do indoors? Not a lot in that episode.
Not in that episode.
No. So you really, when you choose to do something outdoors, you're really at the whim of Mother Nature, and you just got to cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Makes the writing thing seem really easy in some ways.
Well, I think, it all starts with story, right? And if you don't have a good story, it's definitely not worth putting on, going to the trouble of putting it on screen. And we know those stories both, when we're a writer as well as when we're reading, the ones that kind of move us and touch us and that you come back to and you think about, a day after or a week after, as opposed to, film, TV, or books where you walk away and you feel nothing. I think that's the worst thing that could happen, like even if even if somebody hates a show that I've done, or they were grossed out, or something makes them angry about it, if this open relationship conversation makes them angry for some reason, I feel like I've done my job, you
Mhm.
know? Um, that to me is almost like equal to a compliment, because I provoked you to think, I moved you in some way.
Yeah. The worst thing would be the eh.
Yeah, nobody wants, eh.
Now, you got a very generous discount you're offering our listeners. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so on Vimeo, because I know a lot of your listeners are going to be U.S. based as well as worldwide. Not all Canadians, unfortunately. And so yeah, I wanted to make the show available on Vimeo worldwide. And so if people rent or buy it there using the promo code Border to Border, they'll get a 25% discount. And that's the name of my company, BORDER, the number two, and then Border again, for that discount. And beyond that, if people are interested to take a watch, and I hope that they will, I mean, it's super helpful if you review and rate it, on Amazon, on Vimeo, if you have a blog, if you have a podcast, um, because that's the best marketing that we can have is word of mouth. And again, even if you hate it, that's fine. Tell me why. I'd love to get into those conversations, and they're already starting, which is really fun. People who have started to check it out, and who are tweeting and Facebooking now, and saying what they liked, what they didn't like, and it's interesting. Like for you, you really gravitated to the mating season episode. Other people loved Narcissus. I've had other emails where people said, I didn't stop crying for half an hour in Pygmalion.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's going to, I think this is the super exciting point as a show creator, where you finally get to share with the audience and find out what you've been creating in kind of a cocoon for, you know, well over a year, 8 years if we want to go all the way back to the book release.
Yeah.
And start to hear yeah, other people's takes on your work.
Now, you've mentioned a little bit through the interview some things you've been working on, like the dating show and a cooking show. What do fans get to look forward to like in the very near future from you?
Well, in the very near future, we have the Poly Love documentary about polyamory and non-monogamy. That's going to be dropping on Amazon and Vimeo and other platforms in probably in the next couple months. The dating show is called Dating Unlocked, and that will also be launching probably in July. Um, and I have a 1 hour documentary called Drawn This Way, which is two hilarious comedians kind of roasting and also exploring queer representation in comic books, superhero movies, and animation historically. So that was really fun to shoot. And then a second season of my scandalous series Pop Porn, which we've done a first season of 6 episodes, and we're prepping right now to do an additional 10 episodes. And Pop Porn is comedians roasting gay porn scenes. So not so much the adult action, but all the setups, the ridiculous setups. And as a lot of adult companies are doing parodies nowadays, there is so much material to work with. And I think we do it in a pretty, jocular, lighthearted way. We don't hit too hard. But yeah, Popcorn is available now, the first season on Amazon and Vimeo and OutTV, and some other places. So that's another one I'd love to, for people to check out and review and rate and let me know your thoughts. Did we go too far? Should we go further?
I would have to check that out. I had not heard of that previously, and that sounds like a lot of fun.
It was so much fun to shoot. We shot for just over a week, the first season, basically one episode a day in green screen studio. And yeah, we just laughed. We laughed our butts off. We laughed till we were, crying at these comedians. So yeah, I'm excited to go back and have that laughing exercise again for a new 10 episodes coming up.
Fantastic. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes for what's currently available so folks can go find it.
Thank you so much.
What's the best way for people to keep up with everything that you're doing?
I think probably I'm fairly active on my blog, which is on bordertoborder.ca or charliedavid.com, either one of those. So I'm regularly blogging. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook. So those are probably the most active. If you like video, then you can check out my YouTube channel, which is Mr. Charlie David.
Cool. We'll link up to those as well. Charlie, thank you so much for coming back and talking to us. It's been awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time and your interest in what I'm creating.